Extreme greed is a fascinating cognitive defect. It forces the human brain to actively rewrite its own perception of reality to justify an insatiable hunger, trading empirical facts for a fantasy that promises infinite reward. By 1870, San Francisco was practically vibrating with concentrated capital. The Transcontinental Railroad was complete, and men who had built fortunes in the gold and silver rushes were aggressively scanning the horizon for the next massive strike. To understand what happens next, we have to distinguish between investing and speculation. An investor buys a tangible asset based on its underlying long-term utility. A speculator buys an asset hoping its price will spike in a brief amount of time, paying little to no attention to its actual fundamental value. When you combine excess capital with a dense network of speculators, liquidity actually becomes a liability. Fast money chases rumors instead of revenue, creating a volatile environment where devastating asset bubbles can form in a matter of days. No one commanded more of that fast money than William Chapman Ralston. As founder of the Bank of California, he was the absolute titan of Pacific Coast finance, able to make or break entire industries with a single loan. But Ralston's immense monopolistic control created a massive centralized vulnerability. Because so much of the city's wealth was bottlenecked behind his personal judgment, anyone who could map and exploit his psychological blind spots would gain access to a multi-million-dollar vacuum of capital. The trap arrived in the hands of two Kentucky prospectors, Philip Arnold and John Slack. They walked into a prominent San Francisco office wearing weather-beaten clothes, carrying a small leather bag filled with rough, uncut diamonds. They didn't pitch an investment. Instead, Arnold and Slack aggressively swore the businessman, George Roberts, to strict secrecy, whispering that they had stumbled across a massive, untapped field of gems deep in Indian territory. By demanding absolute silence, the con men weaponized the illusion of insider information. Roberts immediately broke his promise and alerted Ralston and his peers. Eager to secure a monopoly on this discovery, the financial elite completely bypassed their standard due diligence just to get ahead of the public. The investors eagerly handed over a $50,000 down payment. Arnold and Slack took that cash, sailed secretly to London under assumed names, and purchased cheap industrial-grade uncut stones from South Africa to use as bait. Before committing millions, the San Francisco elite wanted institutional reassurance. They sent a sample of the stones to New York, laying them on the desk of Charles Tiffany. Tiffany appraised the sample at a staggering $150,000. This is a classic example of confirmation bias, a psychological blind spot where people interpret information to confirm their pre-existing beliefs. Tiffany and his lapidaries were experts in finished, cut gems, not the rough stones in front of them. Surrounded by wealthy Californians, they saw exactly what their clients wanted them to see. With Tiffany's signature on the appraisal, empirical verification was discarded entirely. The investors blindly trusted a luxury brand name to justify their own greed, happily handing Arnold another $100,000. To lock down their claims, the investors needed the federal government. They retained U.S. Congressman and former Union General Benjamin F. Butler. This corporate flowchart shows exactly how legislative access inflates paper wealth. For a payment of 1,000 shares, Butler pushed an amendment to the General Mining Act of 1872 to include the term valuable mineral deposits. That specific legal tweak allowed the group to form a corporation with a $10 million capitalization, despite owning zero verified underlying assets. The final requirement was a physical inspection. The investors hired Henry Janin, a highly respected mining engineer. Arnold and Slack agreed to take him to the fields, leading him on a disorienting multi-day horseback journey through the wilderness of the Colorado Territory. Janin arrived at a remote mesa and found gems scattered right on the surface. He failed to notice that Arnold and Slack had quite literally pushed cheap stones into rock crevices and fake anthills. Janin enthusiastically endorsed the site. They had a famous appraiser, a tailored federal law, and a renowned engineer. These layered institutional approvals created an impenetrable psychological barrier to doubt. They happily paid Arnold and Slack over $660,000 to buy out their shares. Clarence King was the U.S. geologist for the 40th Parallel Survey. When he heard rumors of a diamond field in the exact region his team had just meticulously mapped, he knew a discovery of that magnitude would discredit his work and threaten his funding. He gathered his team to investigate. This split-screen geological infographic contrasts the deep mantle, high-pressure matrix required for diamonds against the shallow, crust-level conditions required for rubies and sapphires. King immediately recognized a glaring geological impossibility. These specific gems require entirely different heat and pressure environments to form. They do not naturally occur in the exact same soil. The Earth provided the final, undeniable proof. Inspecting the bedrock, King's team found the artificial tool marks where the conmen had forcefully wedged the gems into the stone. King rushed back to San Francisco and confronted the board of directors. He presented his evidence and forced them to halt a planned public sale of 100,000 shares. The fallout was immediate. John Slack vanished completely. Philip Arnold escaped back to Kentucky with his fortune. And William Ralston, heavily overleveraged and exposed by the bursting bubble, saw his Bank of California collapse entirely by 1875. The Great Diamond Hoax exposes a recurring flaw in the markets. When the promise of infinite wealth is placed on the table, speculative psychology will reliably override empirical data.